I was just flicking through Empire this month, the preview of the year of films. Is that it?
Yeah.
What are you looking forward to?
Well, probably the film I'm looking forward to the most would be Prometheus. Huge fan of the films of Ridley Scott. Huge fan of the first 3 Alien movies. The trailer looks fantastic.
Yeah.
So I'm really looking forward to seeing Prometheus.
It's great that Ridley Scott's coming back to that franchise.
Yeah.
But I suppose after the more, the sort of 3 and 4, you kind of think perhaps you shouldn't have the hopes up too much, because at the
I don't know. I'm
still a studio franchise, and you don't necessarily.
I'm more happy that they're doing this than originally what Fox were going to do. They were going to remake Alien, and Ridley Scott came in and went, no, that's not going to happen, so I will do this. And it doesn't sound like your normal kind of, this is a prequel, which apparently the aliens don't even feature in.
Well, yeah, no, that's interesting. Yes, yeah, no, indeed, I'm looking forward to that. But then, who knows? Yeah. You never know. I'm sure there'll be a twist at the end.
The film I'm most worried about is Dredd, which I was very much looking forward to until I've been reading about what's been going on with that film. And it's recently actually been pulled from the release schedules.
Really?
Yes.
So it's going
which is never a good sign for a film.
They just can't get it right, Dredd, can they? It's a hard one, I guess.
I can't see why you can't. It's one of those. I mean, it's like when I go to a lot of.
It should be an animated TV series.
No, I go to a lot of science fiction conventions, like London Expo or Dragon Con, and you see the fans in costume, and sometimes you'll see a fan dressed up as a character from a comic book, and you can see straight away why Hollywood doesn't use that costume of the character, like the White Queen or the Dark Phoenix or something like that, which is all the boobs. That it's not a really practical. Or when you see somebody dressed up as Wolverine, which looks great in a comic book, but in real life it looks a bit stupid. So they've got to adapt that for a film. And then when you see people dressed up as Judge Dredd, like it appears in the comic book, and it looks awesome and imposing, and you're like, how come in every film they can't do that properly?
Yeah.
And I really do feel that Dredd is one of those ones
which
is
classic.
It's there on the. I don't. It's But then again, who am I to talk? Because there's been comic book films which I thought were great, like Kick-Ass, which went off to not do anything on the box office. Then you've got something which was appalling, like Ghost Rider, which was a huge success.
But I suppose Kick-Ass is great, but the advantage it had, as far as being a good film, is that it was on a relatively obscure comic book.
Yeah. But it follows the comic book very, very accurately and actually improves upon it.
It was developed in association as the comic book was written, so they had already had in mind they were going to be making this as a film, and it was a tie-in together. So, whereas you talk about really well-known franchises with a lot of mythology, a lot of history, and a lot of fans who do worry about adaptations.
Yes.
What about? Obviously, the ultimate crossover one of the Avengers.
Oh, the Avengers. Well, I mean, you got Joss Whedon behind that. You got a fantastic.
Hopefully, means it's a safe pair of hands.
It's got a fantastic cast to it. There's spending a fortune on it. I think it's going to be a very exciting film. And of course, you've also got The Dark Knight Rises.
The Dark Knight Rises, well. Yeah, absolutely.
Which I think is going to be kind of. The only thing that worries me about The Dark Knight Rises was the Dark Knight, Batman Begins, and The Dark Knight were brilliant, but then so was Spider-Man and Spider-Man 2. And when it got to Spider-Man 3, it kind of like not only just the curse of the threequel, but the curse of too many supervillains.
Too many, yeah.
And Dark Knight Rises, you've got Bane, you've got Catwoman, you've got Hugo Strange, and you've got Talia Rasa School. So you've got actually 4 villains up against Batman in this, and and he's apparently going to wrap up the trilogy. It's kind of like I'm quietly confident, but I'm also slightly worried, especially after stuff like Spider-Man 3 and things like that, whether after it's going to be difficult to equal or to top the previous film.
Why don't you write down in the chat room or on the YouTube comments what film that you're looking forward to the most? For me, the most exciting thing is The Hobbit, because it is the prequel to the greatest film franchise. You know,
I wouldn't say it was a great. I mean, your opinion, yes.
Trilogy. I just think it's just fantastic.
The most financially successful film franchise ever was actually Harry Potter.
Yes, I'm sure it was. Yeah, well, there's 8 films.
Yeah, but actually, that's taken between film box office and merchandise. Harry Potter's been the most profitable film franchise out of all of them. But Lord of the Rings is still huge.
Lord of the Rings, but it's just such a phenomenal movie, Lord of the Rings, and because it is a movie itself.
And we never thought The Hobbit. Firstly, when they made Lord of the Rings, they weren't interested in making The Hobbit.
No, they weren't. No, absolutely.
And then there was all rights issues over The Hobbits, and then there was huge legal wrangles between the cast of The Lord of the Rings and Peter Jackson with New Line. Because New Line were diddling them on their royalties. You know, they'd made like several $1 billion profits, and they didn't want to pay out their share. And we never thought The Hobbit would. It's just one of those films none of us ever thought would happen.
I suppose what's really strange about The Hobbit, and I suppose we're going to have to see how they do it, because The Hobbit is actually the shortest book.
They've done 2 films of it.
After the 4 books.
And this is a bit like
Return of the King is like this thick.
Yes.
And it makes 1 film.
Well,
and The Hobbit is like this thick.
It's a bit like I was talking to.
And it made 2 films.
Talking to a friend of mine who's into Twilight for whatever reason. And I was saying the next Twilight film, I said, with the last book, was it because like Harry Potter, the book was so huge you couldn't fit it into 1 film? Or is it a case of they've just gone, damn, we've just got 1 book left, how do we stretch it? And it does, with The Hobbit, it does feel kind of. And interestingly enough, I should have sent you the link. They've just put out on YouTube the people who had the rights to The Hobbit. When they bought the rights, there was just a thing in it saying that they had to make a film adaptation of The Hobbit within a certain time period, and if they got it made, they keep the rights pretty much in perpetuity.
Right.
So, but it didn't say what type of film version it was. So literally the guy who bought it, then for like a couple of thousand, made this 12-minute cartoon. And it is like the worst and it's like, you know, one of those cartoons that BBC Two would show in children's hour at 10 o'clock in the morning in school holidays. One of those like done by Russian animators in which there's no animation. It's just the painting and close-ups of it with somebody narrating over, and they've just put it onto YouTube, like and it's so
Spider-Man of the 1960s, where they just repeat the same talking shot throughout every single scene.
So appalling. And basically, but they had to make this animated version of The Hobbit in order to keep the copyright to it. And of course, look on YouTube, get onto YouTube, you've got to find, it was one of the most glorious things ever, Leonard Nimoy singing the ballad of Bilbo Baggins.
Indeed.
Have you heard that?
I haven't, no, but I've heard of it.
You must. Oh, it's on YouTube.
Okay, I'll look for
You've got to type in Leonard Nimoy, the ballad of Bilbo Baggins. I'm very sure that Peter Jackson watched it every day to kind of like get, and Martin Freeman, I'm sure, was watching it as well.
Amazing Spider-Man. I mean, I think credentials look
you want to
on paper good.
On paper, it looks good. You've also got to remember they chopped the budget in half. It's kind of like funny. The Spider-Man 3 made nearly $1 billion at the box office, and then they're rebooting it.
It just seems bizarre.
And it seems to me too close to the previous ones.
Yeah. Why can't they just carry on but with a different actor?
I have no idea. It just seems to me it's almost like it feels to me like they feel with cinema, or this is worse than what's going on with horror movies. It feels to me like they feel that the audience for superhero movies doesn't have an attention span. And there's nothing about it so far that's got me that excited. Yeah, Andrew Garfield, great. Emma Stone, fantastic. You've got Martin Sheen in it. You've got fantastic cast to it. But I just don't feel, when I remember seeing the trailer for the first time, for the first Sam Raimi Spider-Man, and getting so excited. And this, it's like, I'm kind of like, yeah. I totally agree with that. I mean, it's just like, yes, on paper it looks fantastic, and I'm sure it'll have incredible special effects. Will it have incredible? Because the previous Spider-Man films were costing about $200 million to make, and this one's costing $90 million. Yeah, which is still a huge amount of money, but it's costing less than half what the previous Spider-Man film cost to make. And you know, I don't know. It's like we're going back to Peter Parker in his school days,
I know,
and it's like it feels to me like we're retreading ground we've only just seen. And yet there's so many great Spider-Man stories they could be covering. It.
I know, absolutely. I mean, the more mature Peter Parker from the comics has a more interesting story, and it's like, why do you have to keep seeing him back in high school all the time? And of course, they're doing obviously another cartoon of Spider-Man, and of course that's going to concentrate on high school years again.
The only one I would really love to see them do a reboot of now is the Fantastic Four, because I was such a fan of that comic book, and I felt the films got it wrong so they were just horrible for me, those two films.
Well, I mean, you know, here's hoping that, you know, Fox lose their license to Fantastic Four and it goes back to Marvel, and then they can be integrated into sort of the Iron Man world of
it's kind of like funny.
It's call it the Iron Man world.
It is funny in the Marvel films. The Iron Man is the top dog, because it's not like that in the comic books. I mean, Iron Man, when I read Marvel comics, was almost like a B superhero. You know, he wasn't one of the A-listers.
But there was a lot of retconning of Iron Man, I think. Yeah. When things like I guess it was Civil War.
Yeah, I'm talking about in the 70s and 80s but now when it came to Civil War, still it was Iron Man versus Captain America was still the top dog.
But they did that retconning with like Professor X, Iron Man, Doctor Strange, and Namor doing this sort of cabal. Yes. The Illuminati, and somehow Iron Man was somehow involved in all the big decisions since the 1960s, but we just never knew about it until then, which actually was really, really cleverly written. And I don't know if you read during, I think it was Secret Invasion. Did you read Secret Invasion?
I did read it.
They did. I don't know if you read the New Avengers and the Mighty Avengers crossover stories during that. But actually, rather than doing crossover where it's happening during Secret Invasion, what they did is they retconned the Marvel Universe, going back to some of the big stories since the 60s, and seeing how the Illuminati were involved in those, and why therefore the Skrulls had this not just grudge but super grudge against these characters, and it was done very well. And actually, the more characters Marvel movies get back to be able to actually integrate into the universe, the more chance of a Civil War movie at some point in the future.
Marvel recently got back the rights to Daredevil.
Yeah, oh good.
It was Daredevil was one, and Daredevil and the
which
Punisher.
Obviously means that Kingpin and Elektra would come with them.
Yes, but although theoretically I was quite surprised with Kingpin. Kingpin is actually a Spider-Man character.
Spider-Man character, yeah.
It was originally introduced in Spider-Man, and actually Kingpin then made most of his appearances in Punisher. Yeah. And now he's actually seen more as a Punisher character.
Yeah, I always think of him as a Spider-Man character. Yeah. Because of my reading Spider-Man in the 80s.
Now, did you read the Kingpin's origin in Spider-Man Punisher Max?
No.
It's a bit very Prison Break-ish.
Was it? Yeah.
Yes.
And there's Kingpin's daughter out as well somewhere. I can't remember what's her name. I can't remember
that. Little Miss Kingpin.
Girl Pin. Well,
Princess Pin.
We need to do a Marvel Comics special one day. Maybe before the Avengers, we can review. We'll do like a special reviewing the.
Well, let's see if Joss Whedon and Scarlett Johansson are busy that weekend, if they want to come on our show.
Should. Guys, thanks for joining us. Like I said, tell us what your favourite film for 2012 that you're looking forward to the most.
And the big news is next week we'll be doing a Talking Who special after. Talking Who is back, absolutely. Yes. And the week after that? Well, you want to do a Game of Thrones to tie in with your convention? That's further away, but yeah. Well, it's March, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. So we'll do a bit of a preamble for that. Yeah. Tell everyone what they can. But I've just rewatched Game of Thrones, and I can't understand why they're waiting so bloody long to release it on Blu-ray. It even held up even better the second time round. It's just great. So definitely would like to talk about that. But anyway, guys, thanks for joining us this week.